to the conversation that we do plan to have today. Have you read the two articles?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So, which one should we start with? We should start with Moira Gettins. So anyone who wants to give us a brief of what you understand from that article, what it is about? What is this conversation going on? आज ही बोला नहीं. What is this conversation about? No longer you take to respond, more boring these recordings are going to be. There's a whole class sitting there and nobody's speaking, and I'm just waiting.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, the Moira Gattins in this article speaks about the whole gender distinction, wherein there is a whole range of um, so the whole, ma'am, actually why I think we were taking time to respond to this question was because we needed time. Probably, like this is for me, and I think others will also resonate with this thought that it is taking, for us, it is taking time to organize our thoughts. Like I took out a lot of things from the articles which I can mention in pointers, but
Yeah.
to present it in a very comprehensive manner, it is taking time for me to.
Doesn't matter. Whatever are your thoughts, you know,
So, yes,
what are
ma'am.
the things
So,
you picked up from the article?
ma'am.
That's okay. Because
So,
cumulatively we'll understand what it is
yes,
talking
ma'am.
about.
So one of the the first thing that I would about is sexual difference. So there is one statement in this sentence in this article which says gender is not the issue, sexual difference is. So that was one moment where I stopped and thought about it in detail, that what, so giving a perspective that there is not just a biological body and an imaginary body as it has been used as a terminology in this particular article. There is also a historical and a cultural context to what sex or gender is.
Mhm.
That then then de-gendering proposal. Then there is in this de-gendering proposal wherein the whole discussion about male and female and masculinity and femininity was discussed. Then there was a discussion on one thing which I could not understand was the whole environmentalist or essentialist argument. I could not understand that, and that was one doubt I had while reading this whole article.
Mhm.
Uh, then the discussion on transsexual and transgender, again uh, defining the term as to
Mhm.
what are the problems. Then the whole capitalist and Marxist argument, because one whatever discussion we had, I thought that the whole economic discussion was somewhere missing till now in our discussions, and this article mentioned about it, the whole capitalistic and Marxist, or whatever, or even the whole so to say the economic system and uh, its relation with the whole sex and gender discussion. So somewhere there was a reflection on that as well in this article.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, my reading of Moira Graytons was that she tries to, you know, perforate the normative dichotomy of sex and gender. That there is this common understanding that sex is biological and the gender is the cultural and sociological, forces governing or constructing the idea of sex.
Mhm.
So, Moira Gatens, ma'am, when I was reading it, so I found this nuance that she is saying that when we are trying to justify this idea of a difference between sex and gender, we are basically presupposing that there is some sort of a neutral body. Okay, so there is something which cannot be which is transparent, which is clean, and after that I mean that neutral body is then you know conditioned by the socio-cultural forces. So she says that this understanding is not very good, because a lot of uh, Marxists and feminists, they believe, and she takes up the example of a psychoanalyst named Stoller. So he talks about how uh, the when there is a child, and specifically a male child, when the child is in contact with the mother, so that's how the child gets his identity from the mother. And then he tries to justify this whole identity, this whole conditioning, by with the help of mother's body. That is how the sex and gender dichotomy is you can say gravitated or defined. So gradually she tries to with the help of examples like menstruation. She says that if she talks about a normal female body, and if there are menstruation, there are connected to that menstruation some feelings, some anxiety, and that anxiety can never be felt by a feminine male. So we cannot just say that sex is something which is surrounded by gender. Sex also leads up to something. Sex has direct effect on the term gender, because that anxiety can only be felt by a female body, and that feeling is then making up the whole idea of gender around her. So it's a very pervasive concept, because they are very related, and it's not like we can term these two concepts as black and white. So my understanding of this reading was such.
Okay. Who else? Who else has got something to add to what Moira Gatton says? Are you telling me that you have not read the article by your silence? Sonam, Ashok, Hani, Kirti, Kamal, Anushka, Sneh. Can't hear you, Anushka.
Ma'am, I wasn't there in the past class. I read the two judgments. However, I started with Moira Gettins. I was not able to comprehend that. I thought because of the backlog in the past class, I'm unable to understand and comprehend the whole thing. That is why tried reading, but I did not, I wasn't able to comprehend. But although I've done the two judgments, Arun Kumar and Nalsa judgment that you gave.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
What about others?
Ma'am, actually, I thought that you have asked us to read about all those two cases, that Arun Kumar and Nalsa case. So I was reading that case only. I think.
So you want me to go back to the recording and say where I said two articles, Moira Gatton's and Usha Ramanathan?
Maybe you have asked us to do that also, but I have remembered only this. Maybe I was disconnected also, because this
So
was
okay, let's talk about what you have read. Let's read the two cases. What about the others? Sneh? Kamal, Kirti,
I also, ma'am, read Arun Kumar, and I was reading Nalsar. I am not completed Nalsar, ma'am, and
okay,
I'm not. Yes, ma'am.
okay. Others, everybody, no, I cannot run classes without people reading. And we have, if you're read, everybody has read the cases, let's do the cases. We'll do Moira Gatens next time.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so everybody has read cases?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Not found yes from 2 other quarters.
Yes, ma'am.
Kirti, Sneh,
Hello.
yes, Sneh.
Ma'am, I can hardly hear you.
Then
Can
you
you hear me?
should have sent a message saying you can't hear.
No, your voice is cracking and coming and then going.
Mm-hmm. I'm asking what articles, what readings have you done for today?
Ma'am, I've read the cases.
Okay.
Ma'am,
Which cases?
ma'am,
Which
I've read
cases?
I've read the Arun Kumar case and Nalsa case.
Okay, great. Kirti,
Hello.
yes, Kirti.
Ma'am, actually, I read, like, I couldn't read the articles. Actually, like, I was kind of doing the research work. So, like,
Mhm.
there was, like, something else that came up.
Mhm.
So, I couldn't do the reading
Any reading?
for this class. No, ma'am.
I'm not supposed to be, no, I'm not there to spoon feed everyone on anyone. You're interested in learning, I'm there to facilitate. It's very clear for me. One cannot come to these classes without reading. So those of you who have read Arun Kumar, tell me, what does the judge say? What are the facts and what is it that the judge has said? And do you find that, what is your opinion about the judgment? 3 things: facts, what is it that the judge have said, and what is your opinion about the judgment?
Ma'am, in Arun Kumar judgment, a man and a trans woman gets married, and I might not be very correct about the words that I use. I might interchange words because of my ignorance about the past class. But then a man and a trans woman gets married, and the registrar refuses to register their marriage, saying that she's a trans woman, and for a bride, the Cambridge Dictionary meaning a bride is a woman. So she is not a woman. That is why he refused to get the marriage registered. Also, the priest, although the marriage took in front of them, took place in front of them, they also refused to acknowledge the marriage. And the whole debate is around this thing: the trans woman getting married to a man, is it a valid marriage or not? So it was argued that because she's a trans woman and not falling in the definition of bride as such, so the argument on the other side given was that the context that was given was that the Nalsa judgment has already legalized, given a legal entity to the third gender. The third gender has been given a proper legal entity, and the states have been directed to take steps to actually give them like legal recognition. So in relation to that very judgment, this trans woman also has different rights under Article 14, 15, 16, 21. uh, 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 and also the freedom of expression as to express the gender as such. So therefore the marriage should not the marriage is a legal and valid marriage, uh, if we
Okay.
look at. Yes, ma'am. A trans woman is a woman according to that definition after the Nalsa judgment.
And why so?
Ma'am, because in Nalsa judgment, it was clearly mentioned that according to Article 15, there cannot be discrimination on the basis of sex. But then sex and gender are two different issues, where sex is a biological term and gender is a social construct. So everybody, according to Article 19, has the expression, has the freedom of expression. If one if one feels to express oneself as different from the biological sex as such, they can do so. And this should be treated as a third gender, which should be legal in India, and then they should be given their different rights under the Constitution of India. Uh, so deriving its legality from the Nalsa judgment, it was considered that trans woman should be considered to be a person who can legally enter into a valid marriage.
Okay. Any other thing you think? What are your opinion about the judgment?
Ma'am, about the judgment, I just wanted to, I had my own doubts as to if we say that bride is actually a woman only, but then we are we are justifying a trans woman's stand and a third gender as such. So would that third gender's definition coming from the Nalsa judgment is going to fit into the definition of bride that they were contesting upon? Number one. Number two, I had my own questions related to maybe we the class has already discussed in the previous class. I do not know. And I actually wanted to question about this whole thing of becoming a trans woman or whatever, uh, going beyond the natural limits as such. So these were two things that was in my mind that I wanted to actually ask also.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else who has a thought or something which she has not mentioned, which Anushka hasn't mentioned, to be added to this discussion from the judgment?
One thing I missed, ma'am, if I may say. Also, ma'am, there was a doubt in the end. I had read that the trans woman was actually born as a transsexual and then got converted into a trans woman.
Okay.
Or something of that sort, ma'am.
Right. Who else has read? And what's your thought? Anyone who wants to respond to what Anushka said? Everybody said no, you've read the judgment?
Ma'am, I think they talked about intersex person in spite of sexual transgender person in the judgment. It was also mentioned in the judgment that what actually an intersex person is all about, and the identity of the intersex child is actually different from their parent. The consent of the parent cannot be considered as the consent of the child. So the state should actually stop the
Okay, let's start with understanding what is it that NALSA has done. Because this is saying because NALSA said this and therefore it is all justified, whatever the judge has done in Arun Kumar. His primary justification is coming from NALSA judgment. So what is NALSA judgment about? What did NALSA hold? Who went to the court? In NALSA judgment. Hello? Why you are so silent? Who went to the court? Anji?
Actually, I was disconnected.
Yeah, I'm asking who went.
National Legal Services Authority went to the court, I think.
And why did it go there?
NGO.
Is it the job of the National Legal Services Authority to go to the court to ask for rights of certain group of people? Is it a normal thing which NALSA does?
No, ma'am.
Ma'am, the whole issue arose because there was a need. So the rights of the transgender community were not realized. So as it was also mentioned in the judgment that NALSA is there to provide legal services to the weaker and the marginalized society. And to me, that draws the connection between why NALSA went ahead with this petition. And also in this particular case, there were other petitions also. Again, about, so there were two issues. One, to recognize, to talk about whether, so to recognize transgender community as the third gender, and the second was regarding their rights. As I said, that it was the marginalized section. So what were the rights that were
Has anyone ever looked at National Legal Services Authority Act?
Yes, ma'am.
What are the categories of people who are entitled to free legal aid?
Ma'am, women, children,
Yes.
women, children, and people who are actually in disaster-prone areas.
Mhm.
The marginalized section of the society. Then
Is transgender included as a category?
not seen that one explicitly.
Please check that again.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have a set of people who exist and who are not recognized by the legal system, even though there's been occasional mention about them. This is a set of people who are suffering and have got no legal rights in the system. So NALSA approaches. This is a very unusual step by NALSA, an institution like, a body like NALSA. So very commendable as a starting. So then what did the Supreme Court say? It traced the history, it traced the background, it said the whole range. Some understanding is there of also the whole range of conversation we had about the differences between transgender, transsex, etc. We are using the word transgender as an umbrella term. We are not limiting it to only hijras or to intersex or to transgender or transsex. We are talking the all over category, and that's how we also understood in our previous class. And then there's of course the importance is that no, when we say it's everybody, the fundamental right to dignity allows us to decide also as to who I am. It's a part of that right itself. And the net result of the whole discussion was that the Supreme Court said that persons who are not man and woman have the option to choose between the three. They're using the term other. No, that's using the NALSA judgment uses the word third gender. So transgender I referred to as a third gender. In my gender justice class, this was also asked for. That the moment we say they are the third gender, then we have already created a hierarchy. First gender male, second gender female, third gender transgender. So somewhere we are categorically also creating a hierarchy, and therefore this was not something which should have been used in the judgment. That's one of the viewpoints, and I quite agree with that. That the moment you call this, because it's a T, transgender for third, transgender for T for third, transgender T for trans. But that's only the semantic category of response to the reference. But the important point was that they said that they also have right, they have the right to development, etc. The starting point, they said there should be reservations in the OBC category for the third gender also. And the people themselves can decide, can opt to refer to themselves as woman, man, or if they want to choose the other, they can do that. It's a choice that has been given. So what Arun Kumar does on the face of it is that if a person, a transgender person, chooses to be a woman or a man, then they are entitled to the same rights and obligations and duties, and everything will accrue to them, which is available to the man or the woman. So if a trans person chooses to be a woman, the consequence is that this person, for all legal purposes, has to be treated as a woman. And if a person chooses, and the normal corollary for that will be that if a person chooses to be a man, for all legal purposes, this person has to be treated as a man. So that would mean that if you're going to school, then if you are saying I'm a man, though you're a trans person, then you can be admitted in this school for the boys. So in this one, they say that because the judgment said you can choose to be who you are, and this person chose to say that I am a woman and was living like a woman, therefore, she has to be included within the category called bride. So by this reasoning, we have very categorically re-emphasized at one level, reinforced the argument that if you are a man and woman, if you classify yourself in the binary of man and woman, you will not be denied the same rights, etc., which are available to the people of that binary. For us, the important question, therefore, then will be that if a person chooses to be trans and wants to get married, so no, I choose to be the other. I choose to be classified as I want to assert my identity that I'm neither man nor woman. Then what rights are there which the NALSA judgment gives to them? So if you're a trans and you decide to be a woman, you can marry as per this judgment. But if you decide to remain trans and you want to marry another man or a woman or a trans, there is no such right. So this will, in that sense, can lead to reinforcing the binary again. Or it may say it is opening up the conversation. One can see, because when I read the first time, I did feel so when we have this whole question of people deciding themselves and then taking the consequences, so that's one way to handle this whole question, which the Arun Kumar judgment does, and it's a progression in that sense. The Arun Kumar judgment is not showing a static understanding of classification of gender, of sex by birth. They're saying people have to decide for themselves, and because he recognizes that right, the judge recognizes that right in the people, he says, no, the surgery at the first level, at the time of birth, have to be stopped. Because at that age, they do not know who they are, and therefore will have to wait till they can take a call on that aspect.
Ma'am,
And that was a direction given even in NALSA judgment. Yes, Anushka.
Ma'am, but ma'am, I had a question. In case we stop, that's what I read, the intersex surgery, the corrective surgeries by the parents deciding for their children. So those should be stopped. But then, ma'am, by the time they become adults, they'll be able to take a decision for themselves. They must have actually witnessed a lot of social, what do we say, people actually demean them. There is a lot of embarrassment that would have been caused to them in the society. So after facing all of this and then going for a corrective surgery, would that not cause them all the more mental trauma?
There are three kinds of possibilities. One is that this person doesn't go trans surgery, the surgical intervention, and goes through the trauma. The second one is goes through the surgery and is completely in sync with the surgery and no issues whatsoever. The third is goes through the surgery and then feel that no, I'm not what my body says I am. That's also a consequence. And that's where this person is very confused. Internally, he or she is very, very upset that who they are. So is that better than the public humiliation we have? This person would still have the public humiliation if this person is not in sync with the body, which has been created for him or her.
Ma'am, I also have. I sorry, I missed the initial part because I couldn't hear anything, so I had to log out and log in again. Ma'am, there's an old English case of Corbett versus Corbett, which also talks about marriage between people who are not a male and female. So marriage between male and male. It's basically a unisex kind of marriage. In that, the basic argument that was given was regarding the whole purpose of marriage is procreation of children. It's very unnatural if two people who cannot procreate the children are allowed to get married. So, ma'am, I do see when I read this case of Arun Kumar, I do see a reference to Article 14 and 21 and all these articles. But then it basically talks about the fundamental right of not being, because the whole issue was about registration of marriage and all that. So there is all about the right of that individual, but that procreation part has not been discussed in this, as far as I read this in this case.
In Hindu Marriage Act, can there be a divorce because one of the parties cannot procreate?
No, there cannot be.
Why not? If that is our argument, then Hindu Marriage Act needs to be amended. If there is somebody who is unable to, because what we have there is impotency, and that too only as a ground for voidable marriage. This is not a ground for divorce.
It's not even a ground for voidable marriage.
Yeah, it's not even a ground for voidable marriage. So it's a perfectly valid marriage if two people or one of the two people is not able to procreate. So when it's a man-woman, biological man and woman, and one of them is not able to procreate, that's okay. But somebody who has a different body and because of that they cannot procreate, then it's not okay. What is the logic?
There's no logic. Also, ma'am, another thing that was discussed was regarding the
Then there are also people. Then there are also people who have got, because there may be different kinds of bodies in men and women, in the male and the female. So a male body which has got all organs, everything in place and cannot procreate. The same goes for the female body also. So then when we have this kind of a scenario where both of them are completely capable of procreating but are not able to conceive, and they try everything possible, is that marriage dissolved? No, so somewhere this whole thing about procreation and marriage, because the difference between impotency and procreation has to be very clearly understood. Procreation is for reproduction of children. Impotency is for, impotency comes in the way of pleasure. So we have said that if one party has not been, after marriage, if you become impotent, then there's no relief. But if at the time of marriage itself, you were impotent, either a male or a female, then the other party can take recourse to saying, oh, this marriage is invalid. We did not say the time of marriage you were infertile. We have not put that. So from where is this argument coming that because these people cannot procreate and therefore they cannot, the Hindu marriage is also for pleasure. If you look at it, the face of it.
True, ma'am.
Between man and woman, it is for pleasure. For the man and woman to woman, it's also for pleasure. The infertile man and woman can always adopt, so can these people.
True. Ma'am, also there's another point. Hindu Marriage Act Section 5 says marriage between two Hindus. It does not say a male or female, or it does not specify the gender of these, sex of these Hindus. So it just says two Hindus.
That's correct. But then that's where the further things are that the bride should be this, bridegroom should be. So that then later on, they're not saying one spouse or the other spouse. They're not using the word spouse. They're using the gendered terminology of bride and bridegroom. So even if we are using that terminology, and if you look at the countries which have permitted gay marriages, they have permitted people to call themselves as bride or bridegroom even in a gay marriage or in a lesbian marriage. And this judgment does say that we have to evolve the words as the society evolved. There can be no static interpretation of a given word. So somewhere, and that's what we're talking about, that when we have these words which were saying man and woman, all the legislations, so the possibility, when it comes to criminal law, and Shikha was raising that question in her chat message, that when it comes to criminal law, again we will say, okay, if you classify yourself as a man and woman, then you will be entitled, you will be liable to be treated as a victim or as an offender, depending on what you have classified yourself. So if there's a trans person says, I'm a man, then we'll say, oh, you can be held liable for rape. But if you have said, I'm a trans, then you can be held liable for rape because you have not classified as man. And vice versa, that if you are a woman, then you can be a victim of rape, but not otherwise. And these, sticking to these words in the gender terminology, in the classification of male-female terminology, doesn't make any sense today. It doesn't make sense in criminal law. It doesn't make sense in personal laws. And therefore, if we have said that, yeah, these other people exist, so are we saying that these persons do not like families? They do not like children? Just because a man or a woman cannot have children, does it mean that this person cannot be allowed to have children by adoption? We're not prohibiting them. In fact, we're saying that you are not able to have a child, then you can adopt. We're saying this very categorical from man-woman union. But when it comes to the man-to-man or a man and a woman and a woman union, we say, no, you can't adopt. On what logic? On what understanding of human being? Are we saying that they are without maternal and paternal instincts? They are not caring? They are not loving and affectionate? They're not capable of providing care? What is our understanding of these trans persons? The moment so for me, this is a starting point of this conversation which we need to have. That if we say, and we go back to our personality traits, are trans people capable of having all the human traits as men and women are, or they are not capable of? Are their body features different, or their psychological perceptions of they being the other or a third? Does that take away the humanity and the human traits from their personalities and their bodies? If it doesn't, then what is the logic for us to say, which can be sustained, to say they will not have the same rights or in the families? What is whether a trans child has a right to succession? So if this person, by Arun Kumar, chooses to be a man, he will be entitled to the property like a son. If he chooses to be a daughter, then as a daughter. But if he chooses to be trans, which succession legislation provides them any right to property? And how is the right to property connected with your body? If today we are saying both boys and girls will have, the sons and daughters will have the same rights in the ancestral property, why not this trans person who chooses to be trans? One cannot only limit it, say, no, this is only a marriage question. It's not only a marriage question, it's only a starting point of the conversation. So Arun Kumar gives us a really huge step inward to think about all these questions in family law. Because what NALSA did was to say, oh, they will be able to go to education institutions. They will be able to get employment. But is that the only two things human beings desire? The judgment very categorically also said we are not looking into the question of 377 because that was at that point of time sub judice in another case, partial judgment. So how did they construe the trans person in NALSA? They are not family persons because there's been no recognition of any family law rights to them. They're not sexual human beings. They will have no sexual desire, they will perform no sexual acts, and therefore we will absolve ourselves from the responsibility. So we recognize them as human beings. So whether human beings in an integral aspect of being human is to be part of families, to be a sexual human being or not. How does NALSA judgment address these questions? We are not looking at that question because there is a case pending. The case was not pending about trans persons. Was NAS Foundation about trans persons? Transgender, that's only about homosexuality.
Yes.
Homosexuality.
So that homosexuality has got not necessarily it's not necessarily transgender issue. Homosexuality is only a sexual preference we're talking about. So what is the justification for NAS to say, oh, we will not look into these aspects? These 377 very categorically talked about man, woman, did not talk about trans at all. So by what understanding did NALSA said, oh, we will not talk about sexuality? We are talking about third, na? Not only your terminology was not their understanding of trans person was not limited to only intersex. They were being all inclusive. They're all inclusive. Then, even if it's an intersex person, whether this person, intersex person, are sexual beings or they're not, they're asexual human beings. One cannot just look at the positives of NALSA. NALSA certainly provided a very step forward. But then the limitations of NALSA, how does it construe this third? The only thing they require is education, and they require. Yes, Ashok, Shikha, you are right. Shikha needs to speak, I think. So I certainly think that we need to really look at the construction of transgender person in NALSA. So recognizing them is all right, that they exist is a step forward. But then if they exist, why should they not have the same rights as other human beings?
I was reading surrogacy bill, and in surrogacy bill it is also preventing same-sex couples and transgender persons.
Yeah.
Surrogacy.
Adoption, will you give it to a transgender person? We've said, yeah, men and women can adopt equally. Can a trans adopt? Can an intersex adopt? Can a homosexual adopt? So why are we? Well, because what we are doing is we are mixing up morality. We still think homosexual activity is immoral activity. We do not think it's a natural inclination of people born with that sexuality. We still think it is unnatural. If it is unnatural, then we cannot give children to unnatural people who are having unnatural activity in their household. So we are following different lines. At the back of our head, we are still stuck with the morality or immorality of the same-sex attractions and actions.
Ma'am, I'm really quite amazed and also puzzled by the succession point, because all of them are important, but succession, it's something which comes very, this question comes very frequently. So if one is a transgender and also
now you really need to do something about your internet.
For herself
you need to improve the internet connectivity for yourself.
Then
Sneh?
do we have any kind?
Sneh?
Ma'am, can you hear me?
You need to improve the quality of your internet. It's pathetic.
Okay, ma'am,
upgrade your plan or whatever you need to do. Upgrade your plan. Your voice is breaking time and again. Say that again.
Okay.
Now tell us.
I was saying regarding the succession part.
Yeah.
That if a person recognizes recognizes himself or herself as, in that case, do we have any provision whatsoever regarding the succession rights of that person? Because this is a
Hey, all
very, very
succession is
important
between.
question.
There
That
is there is nothing na that the intersex child doesn't exist. We don't have a Hindi word to describe my intersex child. मेरा बेटा है, बेटी है, तीसरा कौन है मेरा? Either in English or in Hindi, do we have a word to declare my relationship as a mother to a child who is intersex? कि मेरा बेटा है कि बेटी है, तो दो ही words है मेरे पास. The whole law is talking about sons and daughters and brothers and sisters. It doesn't talk about no. So this no, when you look at Lakshminarayan Tripathi, for example, she says that no, my father was a perfect man. He produced all three categories of person: the intersex child, a male child, and a female child. And this intersex child was brought up as a male child, and therefore he became the brother of the other two. We don't have a word to relate to this other person who is not male or a female. So there's a whole terminology.
Ma'am, again, going back to the three scenarios that you talked about,
Yeah.
public humiliation and a person who's trapped in a different body and thinks himself or herself to be from a different gender. Ma'am, I wanted to question on this one. Ma'am, in a country like ours, like public humiliation is something that is a person is more prone to. And also, if a person feels to belong to some other gender than the one he or she is born with, and actually project it, that is very rare in not like nowadays people are actually expressing, but then it's not very on a large scale. So it's not, isn't it better to avoid that public humiliation, instead like weighing out the benefits? Public humiliation rokna is better than the other
No,
scenario that we talked about.
so okay, extend it to women. Yeah, women were supposed to be in parda. They were
Yes,
not to marry intercaste. And they are even now, there is honor killing if they do that. So because there will be public humiliation, because there will be violence, we should stop having intercaste marriages. Anything which will result into public humiliation. By the same argument, having daughters leads to public humiliation. So it's okay to
I
kill
want
them.
to I want to say
So
something.
it's okay. So it's okay to kill them.
Ma'am, I want to say
Also, ma'am, there
something.
is another scenario. There is another scenario also. A child who's already gone through so much of embarrassment, maybe, and public humiliation, trauma, and then after all these years, it becomes an adult, and then decides for himself or herself to actually follow which gender. Ma'am, would that actually like weigh off whatever has already been done to the person? Are you getting
I
my
do not
question?
know. I do not know. I'm not the one to decide for them.
Yeah.
Who am I to sit in judgment whether public humiliation is better or whether inside my unhappiness or what is worse, public humiliation or my own self being denied, existence of my own self being denied? What is more
Ma'am,
harmful to me?
here I want to quote something which has been said by Marminder Singh Gohil, the first prince who has declared himself to be a gay. And when he had a nervous breakdown in year 2002, and like his doctor suggested that you should come out the trauma you are facing inside. And then he said to his family that it is very difficult to be a gay in my family. The villagers worship us and we are role models for them. My family didn't allow us to mix with ordinary or low caste people. Our exposure to the liberal world was minimal. Only when I was hospitalized after my nervous breakdown in 2002 did my doctor inform my parents about my sexuality. All these years, I was hiding my sexuality from my parents, family, and people. I never liked it, and I wanted to face the reality. When I came out in the open and gave an interview to the family journalist, my life was transformed. Now people have accepted me. And he had also given, given a brief paragraph about like how he feels so sorry about that he had got married. He had an arranged marriage, and he had a great regret that he had spoiled life of Chandrika because the marriage was never consummated.
Yeah. Because when you hear the tales of the people who are uncomfortable with their bodies or their identity, and especially because intersex is only one category, Anushka, where the person have a disconnect with their body. Even people with proper physiological bodies being correct, there's no anomaly in the body, they may still feel a disconnect. So our student with us in the law classes, he is biologically a male. He's not an intersex person. The student we're talking about, he's not an intersex person. He's biologically, she's a male, but she feels she's a female. So it's not that the discrepancy happens only in those cases, but the possibility of that happening in case of intersex children is much higher. And therefore, this whole question that should, the same question is being asked about the religion also. It is given to us by birth. It's not our choice. And we're not given a choice also to kind of do anything about it. We're just brought up like that. So there are certain identities which are given to us by birth. In case of biological category, the biological category, I'm back again. So the biological categories of male, female, and intersex are the categories which may, in any of these categories, can lead to disconnect with the body. So therefore, in that sense, making a decision as to who you are, if you do the intervention at that point, there's no certainty that the disconnect will not happen. It may happen, it may not happen. And I think these are all questions which do not have a very definite answer. But for me, to sit in judgment on somebody else as to whether the person will suffer lesser trauma by being in disconnect with their body compared to the social stigma. When they are disconnect with the body, I mean, both these students we have raised, the one who has come out very clearly, there are more in the faculty. So they are struggling with themselves. And what Shikha was reading about this feeling of killing themselves, to the extent the harassment and their inner trauma is so strong that most of them will go through that phase where they want to kill themselves because they're not happy with what they have. I certainly think that there is a lot more in this whole thing about intersex children. What we were talking about was also that what is it that the NALSA did about constructing these human beings which were called intersex or third or transgender, and how should they be treated in the legal system. So it's a very limited judgment, though a very progressive judgment. But what we are looking at is that the judicial decisions do not take the full stride which they're capable of. So it's a very good opportunity for Supreme Court to have actually given the full recognition of transgender. And what we have in the NALSA judgment is also the state. The state said that as long as you are dealing with only transgender person, we have got no issues to say. But if you are, okay, no, that they said in the other case, in case of Navtej Singh Johar, the state said that if the court is limiting itself only to the aspect of sexuality, same sexual preferences, the state is not making any amendments, and whatever the Supreme Court will decide, they will abide by it. But if the court will consider the questions of other issues like marriage, like procreation, like all other categories, then state would want to file its own affidavit. So both in NALSA and in Navtej Singh Johar, which has come after Nalsa, which is about the homosexual activities, consensual homosexual activities. That judgment also does not recognize them as normal human beings. The only concession granted is to their sexual preference, but that they can marry. Now, what is marriage? Why we say marriage is a very stabilizing institution in humans' lives? It's a good institution. It's the first social institution in the society, and it has to be strengthened. But no, only for heterosexual people. So, what is our construction in all these limitations of the human being? That's important to identify. No? That's what we need to focus. That while being progressive, where are we still halting? That no, we can't go full-fledged. What will be the repercussions if we went full-fledged? What will happen if we grant them the right to marry? If we grant, first of all, the first argument was that if you decriminalize consensual homosexual activity, then everybody will get out of their heterosexual relationships. So by that argument, what are we saying? That being heterosexual is a forced activity because of the fear of law. Because law will punish you for being homosexual, therefore we are heterosexual. Is that the truth? Does that make any sense?
No, ma'am.
But that's what the argument was. But that was the argument. That if we allow consensual homosexual activity, then everybody will become homosexual. As if being heterosexual is abnormal, homosexuality was normal, but that is being punished and therefore we have become heterosexual. We don't even look at the implication of what is the ground reality of what we're arguing. So if we are saying, so now we have said this is consensual activities outside the purview of 377. So does that make them abnormal human beings? They cannot marry. And again, going back to the same argument that homosexual marriages, marriages with the transsexual persons will not result into procreation. But that cannot happen in all heterosexual marriages also. And we're not created, so suppose, okay, we say, okay, no, normally it will happen, exceptionally it will not happen. But in case of homosexual and transgender marriages, 100% it will not happen. But if you were to look at the percentage of heterosexual couples who are not having children, the absolute numbers, and the absolute numbers of homosexual unions and the transgender unions, will they outnumber the majority, the number from this group of heterosexual couples who are not having children? So if these are these exceptional people, the exceptional heterosexual couples are not denied all the rights of the family and procreation and inheritance and everything else, then on what logic are we excluding these others? We're saying that, okay, we are tolerating. We have got certain exceptions in the law, which we say these are not desirable, but we are tolerating them. So at a different level, but on the same lines, one can look at the exceptions to Section 300. We are not saying this is kind of okay for people to kill in these circumstances listed in exception to Section 300, but we'll tolerate. We'll tolerate, and we will not punish you fully, but we'll still punish you. So we'll tolerate you, we'll take away some rights, not absolutely, because general exceptions are completely excusable and justifiable when you look at Chapter 4 in IPC. But when it comes to exception to the Section 300, these are saying, okay, this is not desirable, but we will tolerate. So the same thing we're saying, okay, this is not acceptable, but we will tolerate the homosexual persons. We will tolerate the transgender persons. And we'll say them some semblance of decency, but not as full human beings, as complete, normal, natural human beings. That's what we're constantly reinforcing.
Ma'am, another bizarre defense which I can recall, it was taken up in NAS Foundation case. So they said that homosexuality is bad because they tried to give it a very HIV centric color, that it will lead to rise up. It will lead to rise in venereal diseases like HIV or AIDS.
Yeah.
If you'll try to indulge in homosexual acts, it will be very bad for your health. So hence we should be away from such kind of immoral, quote unquote,
For
immoral
me,
acts.
this was not as bizarre as this other argument that everybody will become homosexual then. Uh,
Yes, ma'am.
the issue with the connectivity between HIV/AIDS and homosexuality was that a lot of homosexual, it was found to be much more prevalent in the homosexual groups, but it was not limited to. There were a lot of
Yes, ma'am.
heterosexual couples who were then infecting their own wives also. So they will classify themselves to be as heterosexual, but still have sex with some other. So multi partners. So multi partners was another category. So multi partnership was not prohibited. We can still go to the prostitute lawfully. So that the fact that you will infect the prostitute, you will infect your wife, then those were not tagged as the issues. The only connection was made that HIV/AIDS occurs only, but that's not the only way to transmit HIV/AIDS. Not only through the homosexual activity, it can be spread even by the heterosexual activity by any person who is infected. Certainly, it was found it was more prevalent, but it was not limited to.
Ma'am, the counter argument was very nice in this regarding HIV thing. The counter argument said that uh, since we find HIV in homosexual, there is all the more reason to allow them to come out freely so that they can go to medical practitioners and doctors freely. Because of the fear of police and being caught and being punished, they do not go for any kind of medical help.
Yeah.
So it's all the more reason to allow them to come.
Yeah, NACO was also all working on this one, wasn't it? And remember, I don't know whether you would or not, Kiran Bedi, when she was the superintendent of the Heart Jail, she propagated of supply of free condoms to the prisoners. And she was subjected to a lot of criticism, saying that you are promoting homosexuality. But what she was saying that no, homosexuality exists in prisons. And they can get infected, they may harm each other because of this. They can contract HIV/AIDS, and therefore recognizing a reality and then taking a preventive action is much better. But because homosexuality was still an offense, she was criticized for promoting an illegal activity. So a woman who was very progressive in her thinking was criticized for doing something which was right, because we still have this whole taboo and this whole perception about homosexual activity being unnatural and immoral. So even with even when the judgments have been given, they have been given, the underlying messages in both the judgments are still that they are not normal human beings. Both in Nalsa and also in Navtej Singh. Both cases, they are still not, because the moment we keep on putting restrictions on them for other things, we are saying they're not normal human beings. Only normal human beings, which are men and women, they can be given rights. And of course, within the normal, quote unquote, normal human being of the women human being, there are still a lot of limitations. So the normal female human beings are not given the same rights. And it is not happening only because of the social construct. And that's what actually Moira Gayton is challenging. She's saying when she was talking, when somebody said that, Jatin said that the assumption is that the human body is neutral, by that she means that the sex of the body doesn't make a difference in the way we construe the human body. Whether it's a female body or it's a male body, it is gender. It is not gender. There's no hierarchy in the two bodies, and that's what is meant by the neutral body. That the sex is neutral, sex is not gendered. Only gender is gendered. It's only socialization which makes male a man and a female a woman. What she says is that the moment you start looking at whole lot of literature in psychology, in politics, how the very sex of the person, of the human being, determines a hierarchy. So she says, look at the So if sex was neutral, if the sex has no gender, then the simple solution is train, because everything, all the discrimination is coming from the socialization. So change the socialization. And you change socialization, you teach them different values, and therefore they will become gender neutral. Then we will create human beings which are androgynes, which do not have a uh, agenda. They will all, both, when we say metro men, for example, when we say these days, we say that, okay, metro men have taken the qualities of women also. They have started taking. We do not have the word called metro woman on a corresponding category. To certain extent that they will be, we can raise our children in a gender neutral fashion. So don't choose that it will be guns for boys and dolls for girls. Do not choose pink and blue categorizations. You bring them up in the same manner. If the girl also comes back crying, you say the same thing which when you will say to the boy, or vice versa. So you will then bring up people without a gender personality. They will become human beings. But that's too simplistic a construction, she says. This sex itself is also gendered. There is a hierarchy created by lots of disciplines, and she focuses on two, the psychologists and the political thoughts, which says that because you are of this gender, you are inferior. So she says, for example, she takes the example of the menstruation. Menstruation is connected with shame. Why it is connected with shame? So when you are children, there are a lot of body fluids. And the moment you start growing up, an attachment of shame is there if you do not learn to control your body fluid. So small infants can pee and do potty in their clothes. But as they grow up, they are trained to control the body fluids. Same goes with the nostrils, everything. So the ability to control body fluid is seen as a sign of maturity. Women cannot control their menstruation, which means the female body is not fully developed because it cannot control a body fluid. And anybody who cannot control, any adult who cannot control a body fluid, somebody who has, older people start losing their body functions. And then they have, nowadays, we have all these adult, what do you call them? What do you put on small children also?
Diapers, adult diapers.
So now we've got adult diapers. So all these are seen as degradation. They are not normal human beings anymore. So normal human being should be able to, so the fully developed adult human being is able to control their body fluids. Women are not, and therefore female body is inferior. Another construction, that females are also supposed to be essentially passive. So when you were talking about, I think Manya was talking about essentialism. So essentialism is that because the female body is essentially passive, therefore in their action also they should be passive. Now from where is this construction of that essentially women are passive human beings coming from? Coming from the body of the woman. The ovum is construed as passive. The vagina is constructed as a whole. And therefore the active action is the sperm running and the active penis. So men are to be essentially active, women are to be essentially passive. So she challenges both. She challenges that one can also look at the vagina as as an organ which envelops and acts with the penis. The ovum is not passive, it is very active in making very selective choice of which sperm to accept. So it is a construction of the vagina and as a whole, and the ovum as a passive receptor of the sperm, which has led to essentialization of the feminine qualities of being passive. And therefore, they have to take a passive role in the society's business as well. So this is what she's challenging. And I was kind of thinking about it, and I think I did ask you people also this question about the male beard and mustache, the male hair on the body. Does it have any function, any constructive function for human race? Menstrual blood has very categorical function. There can be no human being who can be born if the woman is not having menstrual cycles. So that we have connected with shame, and the beard and mustache have become signs of being the rope man, the tough man. So something which has got no purpose whatsoever in society is a sign of is a symbol of a prestige, of status, and something which is essential. So this is a construction given by us. There's nothing essential about the female body being passive. It's the way we have described the female body to make it passive, look like it is passive. So this is all these classifications, all this understanding of the human body is coming from the body, not from socialization. It is not that after a child is born or after a woman is born, she's made to feel she is inferior. It is said the female body is inferior to the male body. And having created that essential classification that women are passive, they have to then stay back at home. They have a very limited function in the whole society of producing children. They're not controlling anything. So means of production will remain with the men. So when you look at Marxist school, how does it explain capitalism? How does liberal school of thought uses women? So in the liberal thought, what is it that women are asking for? How are the women construed in the liberal school? They are still part of the domesticity. The liberal feminists also did not challenge the construction of women as domesticated human beings. They were okay with that. They said, okay, in the private sphere, we do not want any changes. It's okay. We are happy being, we are women, so we have to be. But when we step out of the house and come into the public sphere, we should have the same rights as men have. So the sameness approach came, accepting their inferiority of the of human being and domesticated, subordinated human beings at homes. They said public sphere is equal. So then men are equal in the public sphere. We should also be treated like men in the public sphere. So political thought did not challenge the subordination of female sex by saying that there's a division between public and private sphere. Public sphere is political. Private sphere is not. So how do you define politics? What is politics? What is our understanding of what is political?
Ma'am, the definition of politics given is active controversy. That's the Paul Science definition of it.
But that's not the only one.
Exactly, that's not the only
Yeah,
one.
so what are the other constructions of what does political do? Relationship of hierarchies, relationship of power, relationship of controlling the other. Isn't that what political system does?
Yes, ma'am.
Assumption of power.
Yeah, so whether the usurpation is one possibility, but also distribution of rights and obligations among different people. So whether
Yes,
the
ma'am.
family sphere, we have the same politics or not, whether the family sphere is also political or not, are there hierarchies, are there assignment of roles and responsibilities? So whatever is happening in the public sphere in the name of political, The same thing happens in the family sphere also. Then how can we say that the private sphere is not political? If it is resulting into oppression, if it is resulting into granting of certain rights and obligations, distribution of rights and obligations, determining their status within the family setup, it is political. So the family slogan of saying personal is political is coming from there. One cannot say that in the private sphere there is no politics. So it's not family politics we're talking about the same sense in which we use politics in the public sphere. So therefore, this artificial distinction which was created, starting with the essentialism of the women, has led to political thought, is reflected in the manner in which different groups of political thought have conceived of women's role in the state polity. When you look at the social contract theory of the liberal school, Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau were the thinkers who kind of thought of the human beings. Hobbes said human beings are essentially what? Human beings are like what? Who are human beings?
Social animals.
But what kind of social animals? The ones who want to conquer each other, they're at war with each other, or they are human beings which are always caring for each other. What is Hobbes' construction of human beings? Short, brutal, and nasty. While the later political thought, no, we are very enthusiastic, very, not entrepreneurial. They're very caring for the others. But both cases, when you start looking at the society, when this thinking, the story came that why and how the state came into being. The liberal thought is that the private property had already come in, and there were a lot of fights happening between men, between different small groups. So there were at one point, previously there was no control on sexuality. Then they discovered women produce children by sexual intercourse. And the moment surplus property came into being in the vogue, previously everything was commons. Then human beings discovered making weapons. With the weapons, they could have more than what they need. They could, they could kill more birds, they could kill more animals, and they couldn't consume it all. And therefore, they needed to protect it. They needed to protect their weapons. For protecting their weapons, whoever was more powerful in the two will retain that. So then they said, okay, if we had two men on one side and one man, two not so strong, but two compared to one strong man, we can overpower. So discover rivalry, protecting your property. Then they discovered, okay, how do you get more people on your side if you produce them? So enslave women. So the women became the means for producing the force which will help me protect my property. Enslaving women, limiting them to sexual role only with me, so then I can identify this is my child and my ownership over the child. So that led to small groups of people coming together, the tribal communities. Then they were fighting with each other. So then in this whole chaotic scenario, people decided, okay, we need to be, because we are all moral human beings. We all have a rationality. We all have a thinking power. Thereby, we thought that it will be best for all of us to come together and have some agreements. And therefore, social contract was entered into. So the social contract theory of the liberal school says that the propertied men, propertied, able-bodied men entered into this contract to give up some of their power of doing violence to the state. State will do violence wherever required, and state will treat everybody equal in the public sphere. Because that was the sphere when I'm talking to somebody else within my own family, I am the king of my castle. So state will not enter that space because that's my area. Public sphere is where I'm interacting with the others. There, the principle of equality, we are all equal, moral, thinking, rational human beings. and we have all to be treated equally. So the political thought very categorically says that it was the propertied, able-bodied men. Slaves were not part of it, children were not part of it, women were not part of this contract. So the state was created only for the men's interaction with other men. And because women are, in any case, they are lesser human beings. So there was nothing wrong about that approach. And even when women did start asking the question of, who are we? They said, yeah, we are lesser human being within the family setup. This is our role. This is our production of children is our job. Caring for the children and family is our job. But when we get out there in the public, in the sphere where men are, we should be given the same rights. So when we start looking at the manner in which the sexual body is constructed in number of thoughts, we find reinforcement of the same thing, that females are inferior. The female body is inferior, not women are inferior, female body is inferior. Therefore, female have to constantly strive to become like men. So there's a very, so when you look at, I would suggest read Moira Gaitins once again. Come up with, understand what is she challenging. There's a simple answer, when we started our last class, we started with this only, that sex is biological and gender is sociological construction. But when you, so when we look at Moira Gaitins, she says that how different disciplines have contributed to the construction that female sex itself is inferior. Sonam has a question. What is your question, Sonam?
Ma'am, I have one question.
Yeah.
That, ma'am, there was a case in Nijhawan versus Nijhawan, and in this case, the wife said that husband is impotent, but husband has said that no, I'm not impotent since I have given birth to a child. But the wife has pleaded that she wants judicial separation, and husband said that my giving birth to a child is a conclusive proof that I am not impotent. So, ma'am, in this case, the court said that despite this argument, he is still considered to be as impotent, and only birth of a child is not a conclusive proof, and therefore the wife is having a right to get the judicial separation. So, ma'am, my question is, if a person has given the birth, how he can be considered as an impotent?
Look, I don't remember, I read Nijhawan versus Nijhawan many years ago, and I don't remember it in detail now. But from what you've stated, you need to understand, Sonam, there's a distinction between impotency and infertility. And impotency can happen at any stage. It can happen even after, there might be a period when the man was not impotent, was also not infertile, and there was a childbirth. And after that, he becomes impotent. Impotence is ability to perform sexual act, not give birth. And for me, the difficult question, I'm saying that I'm not very sure that you have read it correctly, is that impotency is not a ground for judicial separation either. So
Yes,
you
ma'am.
need to, you need to read the judgment again. There has to be something more to it. Anyone else who has read this judgment lately? Because I think we teach it in family law. I'm not very sure. Yeah, but you need to look at it again, because if just pure and simple impotency is not a ground for judicial separation.
Ma'am, actually,
The
court
court
said
cannot
that.
no, the court cannot say that.
Ma'am, no.
The court can very categorically say, and the court will be right in saying that merely because somebody has given us, you have produced a child, does not mean you are not impotent. It merely means that you were not important at that point of time. May be true, but you are not important today. Cannot be sure. Cannot be sure.
Ma'am, if I may, sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, impotency is not a ground for divorce or judicial separation, but it is definitely a ground for making a marriage voidable marriage.
But that's not what Sonam is talking about.
I think she's confusing the facts.
That's
Maybe.
what I'm saying. She needs to. Yeah, that's what I'm saying that she needs to look at that. Look at that again, and also. So there cannot be. There can be. The case cannot be dealing with judicial separation. It has to deal with something else. But then if the case, and also Sneh, because if she's saying, and I think that's why that, you need to read the case again, so I'm going to come back again in the next class with your question if it still survives.
Sure,
Because
ma'am.
impotency is a ground, even in case of voidable marriage, it is a ground for getting the marriage annulled only if the person, the other party, then the aggrieved party, was impotent at the time of marriage and continues to be so till date. So if this person was not impotent at that point of time and had produced a child and then became impotent later, even in that case, marriage cannot be annulled.
Ma'am, this law was amended, and now the law as it stands is that the person is impotent and the marriage was not consummated because of the impotency. So,
Yeah.
if once the marriage is consummated and after that the person becomes impotent, that does not make the marriage as voidable.
No, there's no amendment. This is very specifically was, it is the same thing, Sneh, which I just said. The person was impotent at the time of marriage and continues to be so till date, which means that consummation did not take place, could not take place because of the impotency. And the impotency need not be only physical, it may be psychological, the frigidity, the man or the woman just cannot touch this other person, even though there's nothing wrong in the body of the person. So impotency can be mental, it can be physical. But if the impotency was there at the time of marriage and continues to be till the time of the decision, then that's not a ground even to get the marriage annulled. So Sonam, you need to read the case again.
Ma'am, one thing also, ma'am, wife has stated that she is feeling cruelty, and on the ground of cruelty, she has filed the divorce. That this is leading her to the mental cruelty that her husband is impotent. So that is why the divorce was not granted, but the judicial separation was given.
Yeah, so then she's asking for cruelty. And if she has been able to prove that how it is resulting into mental cruelty to her, that's a different story altogether. And there's nothing wrong then in the judgment.
Okay, ma'am.
Because impotency can occur after the pregnancy also. Both in men and women, impotency can occur at any point of time.
I got your point, ma'am. Thank you.
So now that you have not even read Moira Gittins, I do not expect that anyone has read Usha Ramanathan.
Ma'am, I have
Ma'am,
actually.
I read actually both the articles, but I could not reach to any conclusion in the first Moira Gittins. The second article about the Usha Ramanathan one, that was about reasonable man, reasonable women, and she has characterized some cases for a decade, and then she came to conclusion of reasonableness, how the court actually came to the point of reasonableness of a man and women. So that was thing, but that's why I was not saying anything in the first cut of this class, because I could not reach to any conclusion in the first paragraph of Moira Gittins.
Yeah, but
I need to reread maybe it.
I don't know, we'll have to read it again. Both the readings have to be read again. And
Ma'am,
Haji.
ma'am, my doubt that there was a statement that social theory is either environmentalist or it is essentialist according to the feminists. That is still not clear. Like, I understand the meanings of the two terms, but the statement that social theory is either environmentalist or essentialist, that I'm still not clear. So should I read the article again, or
I would suggest do that, because I think we'll have
Yes,
to read the article, both the articles thoroughly again.
Mm,
And
okay.
what I thought, let me just check. How do I do this? my screen. I'm trying to see whether I have my PPT on Arun Kumar. I do have some highlights on the case. Okay, let's look at the case, Arun Kumar. Some of the important points. Okay, I need to do the screen sharing. Yeah, because for me, Arun Kumar leaves the question for me. What do you think? After Arun Kumar, whether Arun Kumar limits, that was my first reading of Arun Kumar, to say that, okay, it's a very forward-looking judgment, because now it is saying there's a normal follow-up from NALSA has to follow. And what it did say was, it referred to NALSA, and here, this is a quotation from NALSA, where the NALSA does say, let me read this para. The gender identification becomes very essential component which is required for enjoying civil rights by this community. It is only with this recognition that many rights attached to the sexual recognition as third gender would be available to this community more meaningfully, ways the right to vote, right to own property, the right to marry, the right to claim a formal identity through a passport and a ration card, a right to driver's license, the right to education, employment, health, so on. For too long, the transgender persons, intersex people have been languishing in the margin. The Constitution of India is an enabling document. It is inviting them to join the mainstream. Therefore, it would be absurd to deny the transgender the benefit of the social institutions already in the mainstream. So after quoting from NALSA, this is the conclusion the judge draws. And then he says, look at the neighboring states. In Karnataka, Akai Padmashali, a transgender activist, could officially register her marriage with V. Vasudev and receive the certificate in the matter of few hours in January 2017. V. Vasudev, who is also working with LGBTQ plus activists, stated that they do not see Akai as a trans woman, but as a woman. But in state of Tamil Nadu, which has been lauded and praised by the Supreme Court for its progressive measure in the NALSA judgment, there is refusal by the authorities to recognize the validity of the marriage that has taken place between the petitioners. And among the fact statement, it is also a fact that they performed the marriage in the temple, though the temple priest refused to perform that marriage. And the local person did certify that yes, the marriage took place there. Both the petitioners and who profess Hindu religion, the right to practice Hindu religion is recognized in the 25 of the Constitution. The Hindu Marriage Act is a personal law of the Hindus. When the right of the transgender person to marry has been upheld by the Supreme Court, in the very nature of things, they cannot be out of purview of the Hindu Marriage Act. One can have a civil marriage. One can also have a sacramental marriage. The petitioner's marriage was solemnized in a temple. Therefore, the fundamental right under 25 has also been infringed in this case. In the light of the march of the case, the expression bride, currently in section 5, shall have to include within its meaning not only a woman, but also a trans woman. And trans woman, they're saying, is the woman who declares for herself to be a trans. It should also include an intersex person, transgender person, who identifies herself as a woman. So look at the oblique here, intersex person, oblique transgender person. So transgender person, when done as an oblique with intersex, we are talking about a biological male who identifies as a transgender person. So it is not limited. His statement is not limited to only intersex, and we do not know, we do not have the details of this person who actually married in this case, whether that was an intersex person or whether that was a transgender person. We only know that this person lived like a woman and everybody treated her like a. The only consideration is how the person perceives herself. This court must, at this juncture, place on record its gratitude to the intersex activist Gopi Shankar of Madurai. This court had occasion to come across his work. It's been a humbling and enlightening experience. Beyond the man-woman binary, there are as many as 58 gender variants. Anyone who checked it out on the net? Do that.
Ma'am, there are, one place I find there are more than 58 also.
Yeah, but you know,
There are a
just
whole
imagine, we
spectrum
have
of
been
women.
talking about till now 3. You're saying
Yes, ma'am.
man, woman, and trans. But then they're saying 58 and more and still counting. Because
Yes,
and
ma'am.
that is where the whole flag colors, that there's such a
Yeah.
range that you cannot put them into one group. We have been saying this even for women, that all women are not the same. So there will be a lot of variations, and therefore, actually, when you look at humanity, every single human being is a different person than the other. And when it comes to groups, even within the groups, there will be variation. So
Yes,
therefore,
ma'am.
one has to keep track of that aspect as well. We use the expression transgender as an umbrella term. When a child is born, it is usually endowed with male genitalia or female genitalia. There are children who are born with the genitalia that belongs to neither. They are known as intersex children. They must be given their time and space to find their true gender identity. But the parents make the infant undergo sex reassignment surgery. The WHO has published a report titled Sexual Health, Human Rights and the Law. It calls for deferment of intersex genital mutilation until the intersex person are old enough to make decisions for themselves. And there's an extraction there. Anushka, it might do you well to kind of actually perhaps look at the full report, the one which is listed here. The quotation from there is, intersex people may face discrimination and stigma in health system, in many cases being subjected to lack of quality of care, institutional violence, and forced interventions throughout their lifetime. Major concern for intersex people is that so normalizing procedures are often undertaken during their infancy and childhood to alter their bodies, particularly the sexual organs, to make them conform to gendered physical norms, including through repeated surgeries, hormonal interventions, and other measures. As a result, such children may be subjected to medically unnecessary, often irreversible interventions that may have lifelong consequences for their physical and mental health, including irreversible termination of all or some of their reproductive and sexual capacity. Medical procedures may sometimes be justified in cases of conditions that pose a health risk or considered life-threatening. Such procedures, however, are sometimes opposed on the basis of weak evidence without discussing and considering alternate solutions. Increasingly, concerns are being raised by intersex people, their caregivers, medical professionals, and human rights bodies that these interventions often take place without the informed consent of the children involved and or without even seeking the informal consent of their parents. Parents often consent to medical intervention for their children in circumstances where full information is lacking and without any discussion of alternatives. According to human rights standards, intersex persons should be able to access health services on the same basis as others, free from coercion, discrimination, and violence. Human rights bodies and ethical and health professional organizations have recommended that free and informed consent should be ensured in medical interventions for people with intersex conditions, including full information orally and writing on the suggested treatment. You can read the last para. And coming back again to the Supreme Court in Nalsa, the judge has quoted from that, no one shall be forced to undergo medical procedures, including SRS, sterilization, or hormonal therapy, as a requirement for legal recognition of their gender identity. But what is happening in reality is more in breach of this judgment, given the Supreme Court, given by the Supreme Court. 39F, state shall in particular direct its policy towards securing that children are given opportunity and facilities to develop in a healthy manner Each one of us, children. They're not saying male children and female children. Childhood and youth are protected. Since it has come to the notice of this court that the mandate issued by Supreme Court is not being honored, they have again specifically given directions to the Tamil Nadu government to effectively ban sex reassignment surgeries on intersex infant and children. Any intersex, okay, now how do I go back? Yeah, this is also very interesting here. They refer to the legislation from another country, Malta. Yeah, so the other one they have emphasized, but look at, when you read this judgment, what I found was that there were aspects which are directly connected with this case and others which were not. So for me, the question left out here from this case is whether this judgment prohibits recognition, because when you look at this judgment, they said the Supreme Court itself has said they have one of the rights included is right to marry. And now this one is proceeding on the reasoning that if the person has declared herself to be a woman, that is what is required for a valid Hindu marriage. They're still saying it has to be as per the law, it includes trans women. So then whether this judgment can be of any help in making an argument to say a marriage between two trans persons or a man and a trans person who is not identifying themselves as male or female, they are saying I'm trans, whether this case will be a hindrance in taking the law forward. Or if we want to still argue, can we think of any argument which can be used to say, because NASA judgment said these are trans persons, they're human beings, and among the list of rights recognized is also the right to marry. And therefore, we need to recognize these marriages. These marriages can happen only in the, because when you look at the other judgment, there was a couple, I think in Kerala. Soon after this judgment came in, we came across this newspaper information, which showed that there were two homosexual men who had married, and they wanted to marry, and they wanted to marry then under the Special Marriage Act. And then they found that the Special Marriage Act itself is also saying a marriage between man and a woman. So in that case, they have approached the Kerala High Court, but the judgment is still not, where they're challenging the constitutionality of the Special Marriage Act. So what they are saying is that, okay, even if the personal laws do not permit, we should have a secular law. And the secular law cannot limit the marriages to man and woman. And I'm asking us to think about what will be the possible arguments to support, in opposition we'll have thousands. We want to find out what may be the possible arguments in support of marriages, whether it is homosexual couple or it is a transgender persons included within the parties. Maybe both of them transgender, maybe one transgender, one other. So what will be the possible arguments which may be taken or which may be hindered following Arun Kumar?
Ma'am, the judgment can be supported moreover with the Transgenders Act 2019, wherein any discrimination has been prohibited and transgenders have been provided
Look at that act more carefully. Look at the range of rights included there, which on the basis of there's a listing that
Yes,
discrimination cannot happen on these grounds, whether personal laws included. They're not
The
included
ma'am,
in that.
the act can be read along with ICCPR and human rights and
No, that's
self-perceived
what I'm saying. That
gender identity.
that's what I'm saying. That we really need to think about this. So that's your homework for today. Certainly go back and read Moira Gatens and go and read Usha Ramanathan.
And
But also think about this question, that in what ways Arun Kumar facilitates extending the argument to marriages between transgender or homosexuals, or in what way it limits.
Ma'am, I think the court in the Arun Kumar case, they have, I mean, in my opinion, they have read the term bride in your section 5 of
Yeah,
Hindu
to
Marriage
include
Act.
trans women.
Yes, ma'am. I think this is a very progressive interpretation of the law. But, ma'am, I believe that, we were discussing this about, this at the initial of our discussion today, that this is a progressive interpretation. But, ma'am, I believe that this is going to reinforce the binaries, that, you will have to be called either a bride and a groom to
So,
be.
Jatin, you need to think of an argument by which we'll say, oh, this judgment is not coming in our way. I want you to really think about it, because and this is something important for your own thesis work as well. What we have been doing most of the time, we just describe what the judgment is about. But we need to look at the judgment to see how are they contributing to the existing information, in which line of development or backwardness it is taking us to. How can we use it to make an argument for moving forward further? And whether, how will you set this aside? How will you say, okay, this does not impact my argument? So we need to develop a critical understanding of how to read cases. So on the face of it, it's a very progressive judgment, and that was my second thought, which Jatin just said, that, it will reinforce the binary. But I moved away from there, and I want you to discover that for yourself.
Okay.
So I may be right, I may be wrong, but I have certainly moved away from that limitation of saying this is reinforcing the binaries. It certainly does that. But is that a hindrance for making the argument for? I think I need to stop because I have another meeting straight at 4, and we are only 3 minutes now in between. So I'll stop for today, and we have a different timing for Thursday class as well, and I'll send you the information for that. But please read.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Right.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Good evening.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Take care, ma'am.